What's up guys, Jason over here at Cog Hill Farm, and today we are in the garden. What's going on everybody? Jason over here at Cog Hill Farm. It is spring. If y'all watched the video last week, you know we repaired this bed and turned over the old fall cover crop into the bed. This sucker is ready to go and I feel like Ric Flair. Woo! This is one of my most favorite things in the world to do is garden. But over the last couple of years, it seems like I've just been too busy that I haven't been able to garden like I normally do. I'm gonna make dang sure this year that I'm gonna garden and enjoy it like I used to in the past. You know, life's too short not to do things that you enjoy. Gonna do something a little bit different this year than I have in the past. I got a bunch of great seeds from Homestead Tool Company. If y'all remember, we started those suckers under the LED lights. They look wonderful. They're ready to be planted. I normally don't have this many tomatoes. So what I want to do is this year, I got two gardens. I call this my big garden. And it's roughly 35 by 35 or 40 by 40, give or take a little bit. And then I have a smaller garden that's my raised bed garden. Generally in the past, I've planted all my tomatoes in the raised bed garden. This year, I'm gonna plant them in here in my big garden, and I'm gonna use cattle panels for support. And I'm gonna do the same thing with my cucumbers. Normally I've planted my cucumbers in the raised bed garden. I'm gonna do the same thing in here in the big garden with the cattle panels. Pete! Oh, Peaches. Peaches, you come to help me, girl, in the garden? Man, I sure appreciate it, girl. Can always use the help. But we got two variety tomatoes that I've never planted before that I'm super stoked about. And that is the Sun Gold tomato, which is a cherry style tomato, and the Bella Rosa tomato. Both these come from Homestead Tool Company. The Bella Rosa is a hybrid tomato that is supposed to taste just as good as the heirloom. So I'm super stoked about trying this one out. Super disease resistant, grows really well in our area. And I tell you what I really can't wait for is this thing to put on some tomatoes. And we had our guinea hogs processed, and to have that guinea hog bacon with these tomatoes, whoo, Lord have mercy, Jesus. Another thing that I'm gonna plant in here that I haven't planted in a long time, and that is squash. I didn't have squash borer for years. Then all of a sudden I got squash borers, and I've tried everything organically that I can think of. Oils, soaps, dust, wrapping the base around with aluminum foil, crop covers. No matter what I've done, they still get to my squash plants. I talked to the guys over there at Homestead Tool Company. They told me to get them in the ground early, get as much as you can off of it, because those squash borers are going to come later on in the summer, mid-summerish. You can still get a nice little harvest off your squash before they come in and take it out. So that's what I'm gonna do. And another thing, fingers crossed, I haven't planted squash here in 3 years. Maybe I don't have any squash borer babies in the ground and they don't get them. 3 different types of squash we're planting this year. We're planting a straight neck squash. It's called gold prize squash. Planting a zucchini, and it's called 8-ball squash. It's a little round zucchini that I'm super stoked about. And we're planting a winter squash. Why are you planting a winter squash in the spring? Planting a winter squash so when it comes time to harvest, it will hold up and keep through winter. Hence the name winter squash. A lot of people, including myself when I was early on, when I was just learning how to garden, I thought the same thing. You planted winter squash in the winter. Yeah, bug. It's called winter squash because it keeps during the winter. Matter of fact, it'll usually keep for probably up to a year. I'm gonna come through with my Hoss Willie plow with the cultivator tool on it. Make sure there's any type of weeds or anything, I'll get them turned over. And just to kind of smooth my area out for a flat surface, I'm not going deep at all with this. I'm kind of using that cultivator more or less like a rake. Any weeds on the top is getting up, but it's kind of smoothing it out for me. So, you know, I really don't want to mess too much with my soil. So that's why I'm just gonna go across the top, knock out any weeds there are, and just kind of flatten it out and get those tomatoes in the ground. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure my rows so they'll be halfway straight. If not, my rows will look like I drank a half case of Budweiser. And I've made the mistake before of coming out not far enough, trying to save room, put a trellis up here, and what I found out is I couldn't get behind it to weed. So I want to be able to get behind this thing and weed it. And I'm just gonna pull me a string, that way I can get a good straight line. Now we're just gonna set some T-posts out, and I'm trying to figure out, should I do 3 T-posts or 4 per panel, but I'll figure that out once I get them up. Now let's get them poles set. And I'm just coming back using this baling twine to tie up my cattle panel. You can use anything to tie these things up with. There's no wrong or right way to do it, as long as that sucker stays up there. I started these in the mini sail tray, or whatever you want to call it. It's got the tiny sails in it. And I haven't used one of these in a long time. But the tomatoes are probably going to be a little bit different than you're used to. Like if you buy your tomato plants at a store, they're probably going to be in a bigger, that 3-pack, or maybe even bigger in a bigger pot. So they're going to be bigger than this. I got to be careful getting them out of here so I don't damage anything. These I'll plant a little bit different than I do those. Those I plant a little bit deeper because they're a bigger tomato. These I won't plant quite as deep, but it'll all work out fine. I'm using organic fertilizer. This one is Eco Scraps. I get 99% of my 99% of my organic fertilizers at the end of the growing season, at the end of the summers. They mark this stuff down to literally nothing, and I go in and I buy every bit of it. For example, this organic bone meal was knocked down to $1.99, and there's a chance that it was, like when you got up to the register, it was another 25 or 50% off that. Just buy it all. But this Eco Scrap it's a 5, 4, 6. I'm gonna space these out 2 foot apart. They should get pretty big. You could do them closer than that if you wanted to, but since I got this much space here, I'm gonna do them 2 foot apart. And I'm using my trusty measuring tape. So let me show you how I'm doing these. As you can see, they are little, they're tiny, but that's okay. They gon' make big tomatoes. Don't let this little size fool you. I'm gonna dig us a hole. I'm gonna make the hole a good bit bigger than this little seedling right here. I'm gonna put some organic bone meal because this is great for roots, but it's super slow. And actually, it probably won't start getting it to the end of the growing season. So I love bone meal. The only thing I caution about bone meal is if you have, especially if you had a potbelly pig like Peaches, or if you had a dog that ran loose and your garden wasn't fenced in, there's a really good chance they would dig it up. Then I'm going to backfill that hole in, but I want that dirt really loose, but this soil is pretty loose anyways. But I want that soil loose so them roots can just have plenty of room to just start taking off. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put some of this organic fertilizer in the hole, set the seedling in the hole, and then we're going to cover it up. Now, I'm going to cover it up fairly deep compared to its size. Now, if you have one of them big plants, you can bury that sucker as far down as you want, because all that's just going to turn into roots. Ideally, drip irrigation is wonderful for tomatoes because they're susceptible to type of fungus and blights and all that kind of things if their leaves get wet. I don't have drip irrigation, so I'm just going to do the best I can. Right now, as small as they are, I'm just going to hand water them for now until they get good and established. Once they get good and established, I'll let Mother Nature handle the rest. I do have overhead sprinkler system in here, but eventually I am going to invest and get drip irrigation. Let's do some cucumbers. second trellis up. Now it's time to plant the cutes. We are planting National Pickling cucumbers. These come from, again, Hall Seed Company. We love pickles here. I did a video on how we make our pickles. If you didn't see that video, I'll put a link down below in the description of this video, and I'll put one right up here. I have roughly 16 cucumber plants, so I'm just going to do 2 foot apart. That should be good spacing for them, and I should be able to get them all in the ground. And I'm going to do the same process with these cutes as I did the tomatoes. I'm going to dig me a hole way bigger than the ceiling is, put me some bone meal in there, mix it up, set the cucumber down in there. Now the cucumber, you don't want to plant, you don't want to cover up this stem really like you do on that tomato. If you do, it's not the end of the world. Put some fertilizer in it, let it ride, Clyde. I got me some backup. Now we're fixing to plant some squash. I think I'm gonna make my row 5 foot wide from here, because they're gonna get big. It's gonna fool you. That little plant's gonna fool you, and you think, oh, I can plant it close, and then about a month from now, you can't walk in here. And I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna dig me a big hole, about twice or 3 times bigger in this plant, fill it in, mix in some bone meal, and come back with that fertilizer. I will come back and probably mulch all this, especially the squash and the tomatoes, with either wood chips or straw or whatever I can find a good deal on or find for free. And remember, it don't have to be perfect, guys. Just get out there, do something, grow something, and have fun.